What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I'm actually really excited to do this video. I've been waiting for a while to be able to continue work on this Lexus. So let's just jump to the chase and get right into it. I'm going to go ahead and, since the motor's been sitting out here on the back porch for a while, I'm going to go get my air compressor. I'm going to blow the motor off, and then we're going to unbolt the bell housing from the engine, remove the flywheel that was installed because Terry got a lightweight flywheel, an aluminum lightweight flywheel with a clutch, pressure plate. He's got the whole kit and caboodle, everything that we need to bolt this thing together and to get it into the car. So we've got an AR5 adapter plate to a 1UZ bell housing. We've got the slave cylinder adapter, the lightweight flywheel, clutch, pressure plate, throwout bearing is built into the slave cylinder. And then we've got the transmission cross member. So I believe we've got everything to get the engine into the car. So I'm really excited to get into this. So let's get into it. So I guess it should go without saying, don't leave an engine outside without it completely covered up, because dirt daubers got into every damn thing in this motor. And we're having to clean out mud from inside a lot of the ports. So they had got into the ports in the intake manifold. We had to clean these runners out right here. All the exposed bolt holes that didn't have anything bolted into them, they had put mud in those. The throttle body has had some mud down inside of it. And the starter vent tube was even completely filled with dirt. You can see they filled in this hole with dirt. So I mean, like I said, it goes without saying, don't leave an engine outside unless it's completely covered up to where dirt daubers can't get to it. Because if there's a fucking hole, it doesn't matter what size it is, they will fill that bitch with dirt. All right, so this is where we're gonna start. We're gonna go ahead and get the new lightweight flywheel bolted on, get the friction pad bolted into the lightweight flywheel, get the clutch disc and the pressure plate bolted on, and then we're gonna bolt the adapter onto the transmission, get the bell housing bolted onto the adapter plate, and then we're going to figure out where we need to cut the hole for the line for the slave cylinder to come through. So Terry went inside to go get the parts so that we can start bolting this together, and we'll show you the progress as we go. All right, so to start off with the parts, we got a spec clutch. This is the pressure plate with the alignment tool and the pressure. I think the clutch disc is in here as well, isn't it?
I think they come in the other one.
Yeah, the clutch disc is in another one. This is just the pressure plate and the alignment tool. So there's the pressure plate, and then all of this was purchased as one single kit. So here's the flywheel bolts, and then that is the clutch bleeder kit, the bearing for inside the back of the block, and then the bolts for the adapter plate. Here's the new slave cylinder with the throwout bearing. There's the friction material for the lightweight flywheel. And then there's the lightweight flywheel. All right, what's underneath that? Anything else? Yeah, and then there's the adapter plate for the transmission. And then we should have an adapter plate, or no, the slave cylinder bolts right to this, that's right. Yeah, there shouldn't be anything else in there. Okay, so that's what we're working with. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna get the flywheel set up, and we're gonna get the friction material bolted to the flywheel. So because this is an aluminum flywheel, you have to have a steel friction plate to bolt onto it, and that's what the clutch disc is gonna ride on. So we'll go ahead and get this opened up, get this set onto the flywheel, and then we'll get the flywheel bolted onto the back of the engine. All right, so now we have the friction plate installed. It's a series of Phillips head screws with 10mm nuts on the back. They get torqued to 5 foot-pounds. We didn't torque them. We used an electric screwdriver with a low setting. They should be relatively close to 5 foot-pounds. It's a real pain in the butt to try and hold those nuts because they did the counterboard just deep enough to where there's barely any of the head of the nuts sticking out. So you can't barely get a wrench to hold it. But now that we've got the friction material mounted, we're going to go ahead and mount this onto the back of the engine, get the flywheel bolts tightened down, and then we'll start setting the clutch on there. So in order to mount the 1UZ adapter plate to the AR5 transmission, you have to remove the front oil seal off of the AR5. And this new adapter plate acts as the new oil seal for the front, and it actually has the bolt provisions for where you mount your slave cylinder. So now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna put the bell housing on here for temporary. And then we're gonna put the slave cylinder on here. And then we're gonna see where we want the hole cut in the bell housing for it to run our clutch lines out. So we'll get that bolted on and then we'll pick up after that. All right, so did a hole saw so that we could drill a hole in it to feed the two lines for the clutch through. So now we're gonna mount the clutch. We're gonna install the lines, and then we're gonna mount the slave cylinder, install the lines and have those running outside of the transmission. Then we're gonna proceed to mount the clutch disc and the pressure plate, get those lined up, and then we're gonna mount the transmission to the engine. All right, guys, so we got the flywheel torqued down 70 foot-pounds for the bolts holding the flywheel to the crankshaft. Got the clutch disc in there and the pressure plate on with the alignment tool. Drove the support bearing into the end of the crankshaft. I'm sorry I forgot to film that, but the bearing came with the kit. You just drive it into the end of the crankshaft, and then your alignment tool will line up. The end of that alignment tool goes into the center of the bearing. That allows the clutch disc to sit in the exact center of the crank. Torque everything down. The bolts for the pressure plate are torqued down at 22 foot-pounds. And then we did have to modify the holes for the slave cylinder a little bit more than what we had originally planned. So I'm going to wind up making a rubber cap to go over this with just a hole for the hose to fit through. But this is trial and error since we've never done this before. So we did wind up getting the hole in the wrong spot on this one. And then this one, we thought we were going to be able to run both hoses through one hole at the beginning, and it just didn't work out. So we wound up drilling another hole for the additional hose, and we were slightly off. So we had to keep moving it over this way a little bit. And then this one we had to keep moving over and back. So I'm gonna make a rubber cover to go over this to keep water and contaminants from getting down inside of the bell housing. But everything's bolted in. The only thing that we have left to do to this is to mount the slave cylinder onto the front here. Once we get the slave cylinder mounted in, we'll go ahead and bolt the transmission onto the back of the engine. And then when I pick up on the video, we should be setting the engine into the car. All right, guys, so at this point, we have the transmission bolted to the engine. I went ahead and test fit the driver or the passenger side exhaust manifold. Terry's working on cleaning up the inside port of the passenger side manifold or the driver side manifold. We still have some modification that has to be done to the driver side manifold. And I believe what we're gonna do is we're gonna chop off this little mount right here and weld an extension pipe on here and get it down to where it's past probably back here so that I can make it easier for me to bolt into. But we're gonna wrap it up for the day, and when I pick back up, we'll be putting the exhaust on there and trying to mock up how we're gonna do the exhaust, and then we'll set it in the car. So while we were doing all this, Terry decided to go ahead and replace the alternator, so he went ahead and ordered a brand new Denso factory, or not alternator, starter. We're also looking at doing an upgraded alternator. So we're more than likely gonna do an LS 430 alternator on here, which is 130 amp versus 100 amp. We're gonna replace this one because it's cracked right here and it's got some cracks on the side of it. I don't know exactly what happened to it, but it was like this when we got the motor. So I'm gonna go ahead and replace it, but we're gonna go ahead and go with an upgraded alternator, give it a little bit more juice. So there is one thing that's gonna have to be modified, and that's this bolt right here. Gets changed out to a double-sided bolt, and you put a nut on the end of it. When we get the other alternator here, I'll show y'all how that's done. But right now, we're gonna go ahead and replace the starter and put the brand new Denso starter on there, and we'll pick back up after that. So to remove the starter, you have a 12mm bolt holding your wiring harness to the back of the starter, and then you have two 14mm bolts going from the bell housing side of the engine into the starter. Remove those two bolts, remove the 12mm, then you'll be able to pick it up and disconnect the electrical connector and take the 12mm off of the battery cable. All right, everybody, so I wanted to show putting the pedals into the car. Terry actually wound up getting the last factory left-hand drive clutch pedal and brake pedal that was for sale on eBay. They discontinued making the mounting bracket. They still make the pedal and everything, but they don't make the mounting bracket for the pedal. And apparently he wound up buying the very last one that was available in the United States. So we've got both of the pedals that are going to be switched out, but unfortunately it's been raining most of the weekend, so I haven't been able to do a whole lot of work to this vehicle. So he's also ordered the new alternator, new power steering pump. He replaced the tensioner pulley and the idler pulley for the serpentine belt today, and completely detailed the engine, scrubbed it with lacquer thinner and a Scotch-Brite pad, and got it basically where it's almost polished. The thing looks really, really nice. So in the next video, I'll take a shot of the motor with it all cleaned up. And the next video regarding this car will be putting the pedals in it, putting the bigger alternator on it, and doing the modifications for that. Finishing up what little bit of wiring that I have to do to the system, installing the power steering pump, and then also probably the modifications that I have to do to the exhaust. And hopefully by the end of the next video, I'll actually be setting the engine and transmission into the vehicle. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but that's what I'm shooting for. This is all determined based on how the weather is going to be, because the weather here in Georgia has been very unpredictable lately. But with that being said, we're making a lot of progress. Terry's got all the parts on order. He's really on a roll of trying to get this thing done. So I would imagine this car, I'm hoping that this car will probably be done within the next 2 months. I think the only other major parts that we have left to get are the slave cylinder and then the drive shaft. We're also going to be switching out the rear axle for a limited slip differential. We're going to change out the entire rear subframe. He was able to source an entire subframe out of a manual transmission that had the LSD rear end in it. So we're going to switch the entire subframe. But that's really all I have for this video. Unfortunately, I was hoping to have a little bit more content for this video, but I wanted to post this update so that everybody could see that the car is actually being worked on, and we are making good progress. So I hope to have y'all come back and check out the next video in this series, and I really hope y'all enjoyed this, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks. Have a great one.